Hi everybody and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I've got the incomparable Scott Gibbs and the GOAT, as I read in some of the comments, the GOAT of podcast rugby, Zelim Nell. And then I read that someone said, Kevin Ferguson should not be hosting this show. And I'm like, okay.
You saw my comments, I can't believe it.
Well, I did read your comment and it was well placed. Unfortunately for those there that don't like me, and I don't mind, I've been disliked all my life. Johnny Nobody, but I am the Jackie Moon of SA Rugby, you know.
Jackie Moon.
Yeah.
More Jerry Jones than anything.
Well, Jackie Moon's more funny and a little younger.
Yeah.
I should call your mother. You need a phone to heaven.
He did have an afro though, didn't he, in that movie?
He did, but he waxed it, you know. Yeah. Let's get into it, guys, and I think the content wrote itself over the weekend, as far as I'm concerned. You know, there was the talk of the graveyard. Mark Keohane even read a never-ending list of failed Boks that were beaten there, and it was extensive, and there were some quality players in there, and I was thinking, oh God, please don't lose this game because I don't want the list to be added to. And when I looked at watched the game, wow. You know, I don't want to. We spoke to our Spanish correspondent and got his comments, and it couldn't make any sense out of it. But he had a good laugh, and the game was absolutely dominated by the Springboks. My question to you guys, and start with Zelim, is it a case of the Boks being that good, or is it a case of Australia being absolutely diabolical?
I don't think I'd make it as a politician, but I am going to say both. So I think the Boks are, you know, this is a crop of Boks that is easy to label the best. They've won back-to-back World Cups. They've got a depth of experience, you know, wealth of talent, etc., etc. And in all the time that I've been watching the Wallabies, I can't remember them being more white label than what they are now. So I think the timing, it was a perfect storm. You know, in the sense that we got the Wallabies at their lowest, the Boks at their best, and that's how it played out on the weekend.
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, it was a total anemic performance, wasn't it, from the Wallabies, given the significance of the game and this furore about the, you know, Lang
The sellout crowd.
Which didn't look to be
sold out.
No,
and
you'd be forgiven to realise that the match day director for Nine Sports, the local channel,
should be fired.
did a great job of cutaways and edits to the South African crowd that were far more animated, far more loud, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess that maybe speaks to his directive about trying to hype the game up even more, because
you just wonder what is his directive, because you know, when you compare it to the spectacle that was in South Africa, even for the Portuguese game, they came nowhere near the creativity of Supersport.
And I think Schmidt would be very disappointed with the way that you know, the way that they turned out. And I mentioned in our show last week, we need the Wallabies need to show us who they are and what they are. And the fact is that I thought that their attack was very narrow, which played into the Springboks. So they didn't create, it was all dominated by the middle 30 traffic. I thought that they would throw some shapes and get some space, try and find some space out on the 15-meter line. But the fact is that dominance was the key word.
Well, 36 minutes, Scott, before we saw any attacking at all from Australia. I think it was a line-out that was kicked.
Well, it was the first time they were in, I think, the box half, and more so in the red zone.
Yeah.
And they fluffed their lines again. 15 penalties conceded throughout the game. Again, everyone knows as a metric in international rugby, that's got to be 8 or lower to be even within a chance of winning. So, you know, substance and style wasn't there. You know, effort, in effort areas, they were just out-muscled, outclassed, and, you know, the most significant takeaway for me is that the experience that Zelly talks about in the Springboks just keeps getting more amplified and such. So,
Yeah, we heard the preamble, and I suppose any promoter, even Larry Holmes was promoted against Mike Tyson, and got absolutely demolished. The preamble was Joe Schmidt, quality coach, quality this, quality that, and he is. There's no doubt what he did with Ireland was amazing, and he must have woken up on Sunday and felt that he was run over by a steamroller, because I didn't see anything from any one Australian player. And if I was an Australian fan, I would be like, man, it's going to be a tough 3-4 years. And you made a point which was basically Australian rugby would be absolutely dead and buried if it wasn't for the impending British and Irish Lions tour and them being awarded the Rugby World Cup. And it's a good point, because in the last 3 years, since they've left, since South Africa have looked after their own interests and gone to the URC, their record is abysmal. What would you say it is, Z?
Terrible.
Take a guess.
Oh, no idea.
They've played 34 games. How many do you think they've won?
it's got to be in 33%, something
Yeah,
like that.
a third of their matches, 13. I don't know.
12.
Yeah.
About 35%, I think. 34 point something. Could you imagine talking, and that happens to be the year after Rolene, what was her name? Rolene Castle.
She was so good.
Well, yeah. And allowed religious freedom and expression. She was a wonderful human being. I mean, if you look at where that rugby has come from her, because she set up, she was responsible for the previous 3 years, and it's just gone down. So
the current CEO, Phil Waugh, obviously former Wallaby, super smart guy. You know, and he's got obviously a huge challenge.
He took on a hospital pass. Really.
He did, yeah, and maybe no better guy, because yes, they have the strengthening of the balance sheet going forward with the incoming British and Irish Lions tour, and then the impending Rugby World Cup. So there's a projection going forward, but the fact is the reality here and now is that you have to be far more competitive in international football, because Australia now are looking more like a tier 2 nation than a top 5.
Well, they are, without doubt. And people are going to say right off the Australia, Joe Smith, as I said in the comments, and I love the comments. I'm not having to go with that. People are allowed to express themselves, but at least have a reasonable opinion. Joe Smith, yes, wonderful. But Australia proved, and because there wasn't any passion that was out on display on that rugby game on Saturday from any Australian. And we'll play a little 5-second clip now of the most passionate Australian that I found straight after the game. Now, this guy you can see is an adamant rugby supporter.
Is it just me? Or this entire game, the fucking camera is zoomed out to the moon? Is it just me? I can't see what the fuck is happening in the scrums. I can't see what the fuck is happening in the lineouts. I can't see what the fuck is happening in the breakdowns. I just see the fucking camera zoomed out to the moon.
And it's just fed up. I mean, would you pay good money to go and see Australia play rugby at that level? Because I didn't see them have any go-forward ball. They were smashed in every tackle.
The key metrics, clean breaks, defenders beaten, offloads, meters ran. The Boks outscored the opposition more than double. Curtly Aronson, again, both sides of the ball, offense and defense, buck 07 carried. So the numbers are stark, Kevin.
Yeah. And
that could have easily been a 55 donut result for the Boks. My criticism, the Boks needed to be more ruthless. Should be more ruthless.
Yeah.
Given the impotence of the opposition.
Look, so sorry, people say you don't get to talk enough. So what? I mean, what do you think is wrong with? Do you think rugby in Australia can be fixed? Because let's be honest with each other. It is in my opinion, it's become a bit of a nanny state. It's woke. I mean, how do you attract the rugby players? Because unlike South Africa and New Zealand, there's basketball, there's soccer, the breakdancing, tiddlywink playing, Australian rules. I mean, Australia. Look, I'm not taking the piss out of those sports. Those are great sports. Rugby league, Australian rules.
NRL.
Now, if you're a paying customer and you've got those products to choose from on the shelf,
You know what sells, Kev? You know what sells in all sport across the world? Winning. And so you got to do what it takes to win. And I think Australia, long before Raelene Castle, Australia has got the mind virus of high school footy. It's all about winning the moral high ground by playing beautiful rugby. And as much as everybody loves to watch that teeters on the entertainment circus side of the game. And the pro game is about, did you win, yes or no? And oftentimes those two things don't mesh up. Sometimes
don't you think it's that way in every country? Maybe a little bit more skewed in Australia, because I always compare Australia to the USA and New Zealand to Canada in terms of their confidence and arrogance, and I don't mean arrogance in a bad way. I mean, they carry themselves as Australian, but when you're in a market that's so competitive, and I don't think a lot of people in South Africa, other than the ones that have emigrated, actually know that rugby is not their number one sport. I don't know if it's in the top 5.
No. Hey, when you got the NRL signing $1 billion broadcasting deal with Fox over 10 years, that just tells you exactly where the priority and what takes primacy in viewership in Australia. Let alone footy, Aussie rules,
soccer,
huge.
basketball.
Soccer. And you're trying to consolidate the market, yes, and sell the Suncorp theatre.
Yeah.
But the fact is, 2 or 3 weeks ago, when the State of Origin came into town, the City Hall rocked, but it was just very flat and quiet on Saturday.
There was no atmosphere there,
No
other
atmosphere.
than the atmosphere created by the South African fans. And I would ask, my question is, if it wasn't for the South Africans in Australia who were happy to see their Boks, and I loved what the players did at the end of the game, going into the crowd, taking their pictures, having time to chat, and you can always do that when you win. It's a much better thing to do, a much better state of mind. But if not for the South Africans that live, the expats that live in Australia, that game would have had 20,000 people.
World Rugby is reliant on the Boks at the moment. Big time.
Can you expand on that?
You've never seen before. Because of the malaise that exists and permeates underneath. Because, we're looking at, not a great vintage of Wallaby football. I dare say the same with the All Blacks.
I think I think we're talking about a box wine vintage with Australia, and obviously,
and a cheap Kiwi Shiraz. At the moment, this is no Merlot Rubicon, is it?
Yeah.
No, it's not, for sure. Look, we've said enough about Australia. They are in trouble, and we'll get into talking about what Perth offers in a second. But what do we make of South Africa? What would Rassie take out of this game? I mean, because the only person that really, I don't think, clicked was Reneker. I was expecting a lot more from him, and if I had to give him a rating myself, I would say 6.5. But there wasn't the dynamism that I thought we would see out of him, and it's a bit slow.
I was expecting more offense from 9 and 10 from a Boks perspective, because of maybe that disconnect, and this goes nothing to do with the reps that they had, is that maybe there's just a chemistry between the two, not the two individuals, but the chemistry between 9 and 10 has to be a little bit more harmonious. And I think it affected Kobus Reinach more than it did Sasha. Sasha stepped back in the pocket and did his kind of, crossfield kicks and so on. I was expecting him to run at the line more offline runs.
Yeah, they did kick a lot.
That said, I thought the midfield again went up a notch in my estimation. From not only the way that they attacked, but they were just rock solid in defence and really set an example. So there were no disappointing Bok individual performances. As a collective, very, very good, but need to be a bit more ruthless, and should have been a bit more ruthless given the opposition.
Look, what do you?
Same sentiments. Look, I think the Boks are outstanding, controlled every facet of play. So, like I said to Scotty earlier, just you get those sort of platform, you've got to convert it into points at a high rate of efficiency because better teams won't give you that many opportunities.
Yeah.
And goes back to your point. Rugby now is a performance-based, results-based business. It's not about entertainment. It is all about the W.
Yeah. So on Saturday at 12:30, which is a bit more. I mean, I was up at 4:30 on Saturday to watch this game. 12:30 on this Saturday coming up in Perth. My fear for that game is simply that you have it with all the graveyard talk and the Joe Schmidt talk and people the comments were that don't underestimate Australia. My comment to them is don't overestimate Australia because Jesus Christ himself couldn't coach that team to a better standard. They are not ready. They've got no one that I see that troubles the Boks. There's no talent in there. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. There's young talent in there, and it may or may not develop into something. But right now, South Africa, what I'd like to see in the performance coming up is that we put the foot on the throat, and we win again by 25. I did predict that they'd win by 22 or more. So finally I got one right. You guys did as well. What would you expect, Z, in the Perth game? What would you like to see?
I would love to see them just open up because there really is nowhere for Australia to turn. Even if they bring back Skelton and Korobetti, I'd expect the Boks to kick on from here. What do I think is going to happen? I'm not sure that that's how it's going to play out. And I think a desperate team, when your back's against the wall, and you're getting questioned by guys like us about, being the worst Wallaby team ever.
Well, they are.
When you can't really step up and change that within the rules, maybe you just find a deeper place where you're like, listen, we got 99 and let's have a party out there. So I think Australia is going to struggle to not be embarrassed by the Boks, and the only other way to do that is to try slow the game down. I think Nick White is going to play and try and piss off as many Springbok forwards as he can and just turn this into a bit of a slugfest.
Yeah,
we'll see.
The only thing they can do, really.
That's what I'm saying. Like, where else do they go? What are they going to do? They can't outplay us. They can't out-physical us. They can't out-kick us. Outside of a referee intervention, they are lined up for another inglorious weekend. And then, so what are your alternatives?
Okay, so, look, I know I've been a bit hard on Australia and stuff like that, but they deserve it. It's shambolic. What can you say about it? But
Well, it's not going to get any easier, Kev, isn't it? I mean, Perth is still a big stronghold for expat Springboks. So
36,000.
there we go.
What do we say? 36,237
That's a lot of buddy rolls.
South Africans live in the Greater Perth area. So at least they have a chance of filling the stadium to some capacity. Tickets are around $50 at a 12-to-1 exchange rate, 600 Rand. For those South Africans that are earning big cash in Perth. That's nothing. And winning, we talked earlier, winning, it's all about winning. So, there's no accident we saw so many South Africans there. I mean, look, the team has won 2 World Cups there.
Everybody loves a winning franchise, don't they? I mean, as you said, this is why the Boks are number one. Is they're the most favorite side down there. They're garnering more and more international support as well.
Yeah, and you're right, Scott. And when we talked about the betting briefly in the last show, they started out at 8.5 favorites. The Spring.
How bad did the bookies get it last week?
That's I said 22, and people were like, seriously? Yeah, Australia's that bad, and South Africa are that good, and South Africa keep getting better. You said that they are a savior for world rugby right now. Yeah. I estimate when you look at we went out to Paul Boys last weekend. Yeah. Look at the factory that produces Springboks, produces rugby players, the depth in this country. You can look at Bishops, you can look at, Bishops are not a good example right now, but if you look at the tradition and the excellence and the Springboks that the Bishops has produced, if you look at Greg College, you look at Paul Roos, is it? Paul Roos? Paul Roos, yeah. I mean, sorry
well, 20,000 people turned up, plus in Paarl last weekend for the high school matchup. That is the envy of any professional side in the Northern Hemisphere. Yeah.
But name me a Welsh club right now, a URC team that can charge £8 a ticket and sell 22,000 of them.
Yeah.
There's not one.
No.
There's not a Scottish club.
There's not a Welsh club for sure. No.
Yeah. So when you look at it, I mean, I was chatting to a friend of mine that owns a bar out there. 10 million rand they took in that week. So that whole thing is a festival of rugby.
Yeah. You South Africans are thirsty.
But I was outraged at the price of a brandy cola, 50 rand. And what's that? £2.50. Maybe £2. Sorry. Yeah. No, but it was good, and there was a lot of thirsty people out there. But what impressed me, and I think I was trying to get the point across to you, is what makes South Africa so. Why do I think that they're going to be the most dominant force in rugby for the foreseeable future? It's just simply because we don't have this nanny woke type state. You go to these schools, you will play two sports. There's no debating. There's no meowing. There's no, figuring out you identify as a cat. It's like you identify as a rugby player, cricket player, or some other sport. But you're going to play sports. How many teams do Paul Jim have? Lots, And there's no mummies there saying, "Oh God, my boy is like," There's no helicopter.
But that's the bedrock of South African rugby and has been for generations, isn't it? It's great schooling.
Yeah.
When it comes to sport and academics.
Yeah.
That gets transferred into Varsity Cup. We've seen the success of that over the last decade or two.
Yeah.
And those professional contracts get converted into URC players. And URC players, we've seen the depth over the last 3-4 years now with the Stormers and the Bulls being exceptional in the playoff series.
We were watching,
and that's why we have,
even the Curry Cup. We were watching it on the weekend, and we're like, it's this empty stadiums, which is always tragic, and it's sad to see what's happened to the Curry Cup. But that level of rugby is excellent. The kids that are playing that game. South Africa has the most talent, and unfortunately, I'd say this to the New Zealanders, but they're kind of a nanny state as well. So their pool of talent is diminishing. It's going to be harder for them to recruit people into rugby. Due to the time spent on Fortnite or whatever their parents allow them to play.
But that's the key right there, Kev, is that rugby in a lot of these countries outside of South Africa has tried to compete with mainstream media as an alternative for kids. Like saying, well, don't play your PlayStation. Come and learn how to be a skillful rugby player. You're never going to win like that. Rugby's USP is physicality, brute force, being able to express yourself between four white lines according to some rules physically. And that's its unique selling point. And the rugby in a lot of countries has apologized for that and tried to water it down to being a tiddlywink skills-based thing. And that's what Australia's guilty of.
From Welsh Rugby Union banning Tom Jones Delilah to...
But I'm talking about even beyond culture. Like I coached a little bit in the UK and in the States. And in the UK, they don't start tackling till they're 13. It's all about flag, tag, rugby. It's all about skills, catch and pass, and running lines, and that's all useful stuff. Yeah. But right at the heart of it, and the Springboks are a case in point here, is brute force. Yeah. That's what rugby is about, brute force. The skills are sort of something that adds on to that to create some amazing tries and things. But force is where it starts, and I think the junior systems and structures in the UK and in Australia are very much trying to entice kids like, Mom, it's going to be fine. Your boy's not going to get hurt because we're just going to teach him to catch and pass. Yeah. And this is what you get, a team full of guys that are very skillful but can't front up.
Yeah, and when you talk about brute force, you're absolutely right, because the one thing that was so noticeable in that game on Saturday was the gain line, the gain line that was achieved by almost every single South African attacker or ball carrier. And all I saw was people being stopped dead or going back when it came to, it was men against boys.
Yeah.
Men against boys. So you're right about that. Let's finish the show because we will have a couple more.
We don't know how long the lights are going to stay, right?
What would you like to see in Saturday's game?
Beyonce fly off.
I say this, Kev. I think the Boks will double down. They'll double down in it all. Yeah. It'll be a ton of bricks. They will double down on physicality. They will double down on skill level. I think they will double down on energy spent.
Yeah.
Because they're just that dominant at the moment. And also, this is a precursor to what's ahead.
Yeah.
You know, notwithstanding the Argentina victory against the All Blacks are still coming here for 2 tests. You know, that is the greatest rivalry in world rugby. So this is another hit out. It's getting everything right thematically, executionally, and it's dialing up the heat again.
Yeah. Okay. Zels, what would you like to see? What do you think is going to happen? We're not going to make predictions now, but what would you like to see?
No, I think exactly what Scott said. The Boks are going to be in full overdrive, especially since the All Blacks lost against Argentina. I think they've got the momentum now in this competition. The All Blacks are in chase mode. They're going to want to put their foot down and bank 5 log points. I can't see Australia being able to stop them. And so for the Boks, all the sort of grey lining that Scott and I alluded to about not executing as well as they could have will be a big motivator this week, I think, for them to log a record victory. They were 1 point away from that last one being a record victory. They let that slip, and I think that all of that just gives them motivation this week to really...
Yeah, look, if it wasn't for an unfortunate decision by Billy LaRue, who I do like, a great player, if he'd have gone outside, there would have been... I mean, it should have been 50-0. If it wasn't for the sort of messing of the yellow cards, and I thought the referee had an amazing game. I thought that he was so clear in his direction.
He is great. And like I said last week, you know, a referee can make a good game better, but he can't make a bad game good. And, you know, he communicates and articulates to the players in a very respectful manner.
Yeah.
But he keeps the game alive. And it's not about the referee; it's about the ball in field. You know, I like that about him. Conversely, you know, Angus Gardner, you know, it was a bitty performance from a referee in that respect.
Yeah, I thought he was very inconsistent. Not that I paid I paid DSTV to watch him, but yeah, it wasn't great. Interesting here, you on the betting front. Australia. So bearing in mind that we were at 8.5 last week on Wednesday, they drifted out to 11.5. They're at minus 13.5, even money. I still think I see no value in plus 13.5 on Australia. The value has to be. I would see 13.5 drifting out to about 15.5, 16.5 by the end of the week.
Yeah.
So I think if you want some value there, folks, it's got to be minus 13.5. But anyway,
what odds would you get on like 20 points?
Well, funny you say that. No, you would probably get on 20 points, 7-4.
They got it wrong, Kev. They got it wrong.
Yeah. And you know, I did take 22. I got paid out 3-1. I did take 8.5. Got paid out even money, and I did take Argentina plus 18.5 point handicap. So the bookies got it horribly wrong. They would have taken a bit of a beating, but they'll be back for another fight.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, thanks for joining me for the show. I really appreciate it. For me, Jackie Moon, everybody love everybody, and I'll chat to you guys later in the week.